with the genealogies, as we're going to continue in another one today, hopefully. We are going from Adam, and the final target is going to go to Abram. 20 generations from Adam. Noah is 10 generations from Adam, and then we go another 10 and we get to Abram. And the Bible focuses down onto Abram. It starts at the beginning, tells us where everyone came from, and it tells us the events that occurred years ago on the early earth, that of the Garden of Eden, being cast out of the Garden of Eden, the wickedness of men, the destruction of that, and the flood, and then this side of the flood with Babel, and then going on from Babel then to Abram. And when we get to Abram, we're going to stay with him for quite a while. More will be said about Abram, who will become Abraham. His name is changed. There is more chapters devoted to him than there is to Adam or to Noah, or even to, someone like Enoch is mentioned. Someone like Lamech is mentioned. But not a lot said about them at all. But when we get to Abraham, a lot is being said, and we focus on him for quite a bit. We are in Christian apologetics. We're continuing in this section of the Bible is the Word of God. And last week we spoke about the reality of Babel and the events that occurred at Babel. And we asked the question, was Babel real? We talked about languages last week. This week we're going to look at other evidences. This is known as a Babel bowl. It has this tapered rim to it, and it's very much sharp taper going to the bottom. It is believed that these were for baking bread. Put this in the oven, I suppose so. And this would have come from Eridu, which is understood as being ancient Babel. And this is the oldest objects found on that site. And they know that in Eridu there was a thriving population up to a certain point, and then it stopped. Why would it stop? Did they all die? No, they all moved away. So it would stop. There would be no people there. And according to archaeology, there would be no people there for the next 200 years, and then it would be resettled later. But Eridu is, and we'll get to Eridu in a little bit, Eridu is considered to be the oldest city, known city in the world. It is the oldest, regarded that way. And I would have to say, if there are any older, they would have to be pre-flood. And I don't think that everything before the flood was utterly destroyed. The people were, yes, animals as well. But that doesn't mean that everything they built was destroyed. I don't think that that's the case at all. But this is known as the Sumerian Kings List. Very, very old document. It is clay. This is found in the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, England. And it lists kings on it. On it, it lists kings who had extremely long lifespans and were swept over by a flood. Okay? That sounds familiar. Now, the Bible doesn't tell us there were kings prior to the flood. But that doesn't mean they weren't there. If you have large populations, you're going to have someone organizing everything, someone who's going to be a leader, someone who's going to claim that leadership, and we would call that person a king. And here are the names if you're interested in them. Are these the names? I can't answer that. I don't know if these were actually the names of the real names of these kings before the flood? I can't answer that. Could they have gotten the names of these kings? Yes. From 8 people, they could have gotten these names. Noah and his wife, Shem, Ham, Japheth, and their wives. They would have known what had occurred before the flood because they lived before the flood. This would have been a matter of current events or history there prior to the flood. They would have known them. They could have conveyed them as a thing of history. Why wouldn't they? They wouldn't have denied that nothing occurred before the flood. That'd be losing the lesson entirely. That there was an enormous population, advanced population, destroyed by a flood. And are these the real names? I don't know. But what we really want to focus on is the fact that for the Sumerians, and this is very ancient language, for them, they did see that there were, not only was there a flood that took the world, but, and because of wickedness, and God is the one who did it. Now they're going to change the name of God. That's no surprise. But that there were these kings that lived on the other side and were destroyed with everybody else. And did I mention that the kings had extremely long lifespans? All right. They saw that people prior to the flood lived a lot longer than they did. And honestly, they live longer than we do. We are pathetic compared to those prior to the flood, or even those just after the flood. They were living long lives, but there is a decline as we go past the flood. After so many years, we see that the lifespan of people does decrease, and at times it decreases sharply. Now let's go to this. Not only does it include those names of these kings prior to the flood. If that's fiction, it's fiction. I can't answer that. They are recognizing some things that coincide with what the Bible is saying. But it also includes Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is Nimrod, just a different name for him. Gilgamesh is Nimrod. Gilgamesh was the king of Uruk, and Uruk is the Sumerian word for Erech, which is the Hebrew word for the same place. Gilgamesh was the king of Uruk. Nimrod was the king of Erech. He is the one who built it. And you have the Sumerian kings list Gilgamesh in there, obviously after the 8 before the flood. They list Gilgamesh in there, and they also list him as someone who did not have a father as a king. Well, Nimrod didn't. Cush is his father. Cush wasn't a king. Nimrod was. Nimrod became a king. He's like a self-made man. You could think of it that way. He was the mighty one, that mighty hunter on the earth, and a builder of cities, and had to have had a natural leadership ability. He had to be able to have made Babel what it was until that idea was destroyed by God. And then he went on to build places like Nineveh. All right, Nineveh, which would later become the capital of the Assyrian Empire. Very ancient city when Jonah was called to it. Very ancient. And then you have Nahum, who he prophesies about the end of Nineveh, and Nineveh is destroyed by the Babylonians. Now, this also, the Sumerian kings list also includes Eridu as being a first city. And this is what it looks like today. And it was also called, it's where Enlil lived. Enlil is a god. All right, he's a pagan god. And the Sumerians said that this is where Enlil lived. And I have no doubt that Babel did have pagan gods in it. I have no doubt about it. Because that's us, isn't it? No excuse. That's what humanity does. It doesn't take long for us as a group to leave God. You still have faithful people, but as a group, it just doesn't take us long at all. We're looking at with Babel. Babel would have been about 101 years after the flood, and I've put that on your paper of important dates there. I've put in the date of the flood, I've put the date of Babel, and that's when Babel would have split up, not the building of Babel, because the building of Babel would have, I don't know how many years it had been going on that they were building Babel. Also have, I do believe, the birth of Abram in there. But here is this city, and it is mentioned on this particular clay tablet. That's a rather large one. But let's now talk about Babel being remembered and being carried to other places. All right? And we're going to look at 3 different examples in this. One comes from this particular man, Hendrik Hamel. He was a Dutch sailor. His life was 1630 to 1692. And he was on a ship. He's Portuguese. He is on a ship heading to Japan, is where they're going. They get into a storm and in the Sea of Japan, and they get shipwrecked onto Korea. And the Koreans don't treat them very well. They put them into prison. Okay. And you've got, they don't know, do they even know who they are? No, they probably don't. But they throw them into prison. This particular man, Hendrik Hamel, he and some others eventually escaped. I don't know how that happened, but eventually escaped, got on a ship, and went to Japan, which is where they were going to begin with. He later is able to go home, no, he's not Portuguese, he's Dutch. I'm sorry, he's a Dutch sailor. He eventually gets to go home, and he writes his memoir. And in recounting the things in Korea, he says this: many monks, these would be Buddhist monks, by the way, many monks believed that long ago, all people spoke the same language, but when people built a tower in order to climb into heaven, the whole world changed. Okay, well, that is a memory. That is something that had been passed down among the Korean people. Were the Korean people, were the ancestors of the Korean people in Babel? Yeah, they were. Yeah, as everybody else, pretty much. There would be those that I think we spoke about it in this class. I can't remember, but that we cannot say that everybody, all of humanity, was in Babel. The whole idea of making a name for ourselves means trying to entice others in, that there were probably other settlements that had already been occurring. They want to be the one where everyone wants to be. That would be the Big Apple, if you will. That is city number 1. This is where you want to be. Here is progress. Here is human power. Here is just a stunning sort of future for all of humanity. Come to shining, they wouldn't call it Babel, whatever the city was, whatever they called it. All right, and here everyone goes away when you have God dividing everybody up according to languages. Everybody goes away, and you have still the memory of this. It had to have been recorded one way or another. We also, let's look at some of the main things here. Some of the main plot similarities. We have the world's population spoke one language. The people built a tower. Their goal was to climb into heaven. Actually, that's not what the biblical text, that's not what Genesis 11 says. They were building a tower to heaven, and that would just mean the sky. It's not that they were trying to enter heaven at all. They were trying to impress people. And that's what they say they're doing. Their efforts affected the entire world. The things that happen with this city, with this tower, it affects the entire world. And so here you have this similar, actually identical plot in this story as we see in the flood stories. These identical plots that are found all over the world. They change the names, they change some detail. From instead of a flood of water, it's a flood of blood, or you still have angry God or gods, and they change the names. But the plot is still the same. The plot is still the same. Coincidental? I don't see how it could be. Obviously the naysayers are always going to say it's coincidental, or that it's just weird. All right, as my anthropology professor used to say, when there was something he couldn't explain and it pointed in a direction he knew where it pointed, he would just say, that's kind of weird, isn't it? Well, maybe, or maybe it's pointing to something and you just don't want to recognize the direction. Now, let's look at this before we get into our next thing. From the ark, the animals leaving went wherever they pleased, except for the animals you would want to keep. No doubt they would keep the cattle. No doubt they would keep the horses. Well, in my mind you would. Anyway, I don't know what they actually did. But there are certain animals you would keep. Sheep you would keep. Goats you would keep that too. But all these other things, like he already lost a raven, he already lost a dove, okay, those have gone wherever they're going to go. And I'm talking about Noah. Those have already left. There's no telling what direction they went. All right, the birds can go over water, no problem whatsoever. But as far as those without wings or birds that can't fly, they're going to have to walk and multiply as they go. But there's no knowing where they're going. They can go everywhere. Now, let's just ask the question. I don't know if I've asked this question in here or not, but were there scorpions on the ark? Yes, of course they were. Scorpions can't live underwater. They were on the ark. All right, how many were they? I can only guess there were 2. That's enough. 2 scorpions. All right, where did the scorpions go after the mountains of Ararat? Where'd they go? Well, you don't know. But how long would it be? Let's just say you were on the ark. You're well acquainted with the scorpions. The scorpions lived over here, and the spiders lived over here, and whatever. You would be well acquainted with the things on that ark. So we get off the ark, and we're going to live, coming off the ark, everybody. Now we don't have dates for everybody. We have the dates for Shem and for Noah, not for Ham or Japheth. We don't know how long they actually lived, or the wives, we don't know how long they actually lived. But everybody could have lived a very long life. How long would it be? Let us say that we moved away from where the ark landed, and I believe they had to, moved away from where the ark landed. How long would it be before we saw another scorpion? Actually, we could live the rest of our lives and our children and our grandchildren never see one ever in their life. because scorpions, they're having to repopulate, and who knows where they went. And same thing concerning other animals, that you would have seen large cats. When would be the next time you see large cats? Maybe a long time before you see them. Okay, and so we come to the Epic of Inmakar. This is actually now it is in Philadelphia. It's in the University of Philadelphia Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology. This is a Sumerian tablet. Now, I've already mentioned the Sumerian kings list. Do not confuse Sumerian with Sumerian. There's a huge difference by centuries. The Sumerians would have been coming out of Babel and settling in Mesopotamia. The Sumerians are centuries later. We see those in the New Testament. Those are that northern kingdom of Israel that was taken by the Assyrians, and they are now a mixed people. And they don't have a genealogy that they have kept up with. And they consider themselves full-fledged Jews, and the Jews returning from the captivity, if you don't have a genealogy, then you can't claim any kind of inheritance. If you have a genealogy, yeah, there's land for you, and we can show you where that land is. And if you're a Levite, specifically if you are a son of Aaron, then we have a place for you, and that's going to be in the temple. But if you have no genealogy, then you can't really do that. We can't use you as a priest because we have no idea what you are. All right, neither do you. Sounds cruel, but no, it's not cruel. That is the law that was laid down. Because anybody can come in and say, yeah, my father was such and such, and this is his property. You got to be able to prove it. All right, you have to prove it. So the Sumerians predate the Sumerians by a long time. This is a Sumerian tablet called the Epic of Inmakar. It was written after Babel. How many years? Don't know. But it is speaking of that older time around Babel. Speaking of that older time is like a golden age, a different age. And this is how it's described. In those days, there was no snake, there was no scorpion, there was no hyena, there was no lion. Why wouldn't there be? Yeah, they're off repopulating the world, all right, with their kind. So the likelihood is you wouldn't see one again. Not until years later when they begin wandering into your area. You wouldn't see them again because there's too few of them. There was no lion. There was no wild dog, no wolf. There was no fear or terror. Man had no rival. So not really concerned about bears, not really concerned about lions so much because they would be relatively rare. And I understand there are certain animals that they don't herd together. They will spread out. Big cats are one of those. But you know, they have to stay in relative closeness to each other. Otherwise, you can't have any more big cats. They had no rival. We will skip this part because it's not necessary for us. The whole universe, the people in unison, to Enlil in one tongue gave praise. That's Enlil. That was the city of Eridu. Enlil supposedly was there. Enlil is just a pagan god. They were worshiping Enlil and worshiping him with one tongue. And it says the people in unison, the whole universe, the people in unison. That means the entire population of the earth had one language. and with one language, they were worshiping the wrong God, is what they were doing. And yes, in Eridu, there is a foundation of what is considered to be a temple, and a temple that had been enlarged in time. And they were definitely worshiping someone, and here in this particular epic, they were worshiping in Lil. And here is an image of him, and worshiping in Lil does not destroy the narrative of the Bible whatsoever. Matter of fact, it just confirms what the Bible already says about us, specifically in places such as Romans chapter 1. But not just there. You can find it in plenty of places in the Old Testament, of where it does not take long for a population who worships God to suddenly, they're not. They've gone to something else, and they went pretty fast. It would appear to be a shocking thing for someone like Moses and Joshua to see it. It's like, when we left these people, all seemed well. Now we're coming back. What just happened? Is this the same people? Is that still Aaron? What possessed you people to do this? It doesn't take long at all. Now, we head over to Chinese writing again. We did this concerning the flood. And I have to specify that in Chinese writing, it's the traditional characters. These are older, more complicated characters than are what's in the People's Republic of China today. They simplified the characters. And, I understand why you would. It requires a lot of energy to write some of these characters down. So we have talked about this, that the Chinese writing is not a phonetic system. It does not provide a guide as to how something is to be pronounced. You just have to learn how it's to be pronounced, as well as the meaning of that word. And you have what are known as, they're called radicals. In Chinese writing, a radical is something that cannot be reduced any further. It is a Chinese character that cannot be broken down. But there are certain characters that take several of these radicals and put them together to make a new word. And the word has a completely different pronunciation. It doesn't include those radicals at all. It has a new pronunciation. Okay, that's kind of complicated to me, but that is their language. And here is in traditional Chinese character for migrate or migration. And it has several parts to it. This is 1, 2, 3, 4 parts that have been thrown together. Each one of these, this is a particular radical. This is a radical. These can be separated and they have their own meaning. Put them together, you have a different meaning, not pronounced like any of the radicals, and it doesn't hold the same meaning as all the radicals. It's a new idea, but you do see why these combinations were made. You do see why they're made. It was just like we did concerning boat or ship. The Chinese word for ship is 8 people vessel. All right, how do you come up with 8 people in a vessel and that equals ship? Well, sounds like the ark to me. And with this comes to, this is the word here, this is the everything put together, separated. You have great walk from the west, great walk west, and then stop. Well, where did they come from? Where did the Chinese come from? They didn't come from China. They went to China. They would have come from the west. Babel's in the west. And it would be Great walk is putting it lightly, in my opinion. That would have been a long walk. And from Babel, you just choose your direction. If you come to an ocean, stay at the ocean, or follow the path somewhere else. Go where you want to go and build whatever cities you want to build. Build whatever towers you want to build. God doesn't stop that. He doesn't want everybody living in the same place. Fan out, spread out. That's what He wants to occur. And now we're going to get to the genealogy in Genesis 11. And this continues to give us a timeline. How old is the earth? Well, genealogies are going to supply that answer. They do supply that answer, and I do take them literally, and because I have no reason not to. If I had a good reason to, and saying that the earth is billions of years old is not a good reason. That's just following a lie, is what that is. It's funny that those that say the world is billions, or that the universe is billions. It's funny how they appear to be wrong on every front, but they've got to be right on that one. They got to be right on that one. Every little idea, every little theory that they have concerning how everything had to come to be turns out to be highly flawed. Well, if that's highly flawed, then needing the billions of years is just part of that flaw. All right, so we're going to look at this, and I want to review this again so no one gets confused on this, that the Bible promotes a timeline of the earth, starting from day one with the creation of light, all the way, Genesis takes us all the way to where we have Jacob and his family in Egypt. And this is the way we count years. We have BC, that is before Christ, AD, Anno Domini, the year of our Lord. That would be from the birth of Christ moving forward to us. That's the way we do it. This is the Gregorian calendar, but we're counting years from the biblical perspective. There was no Gregorian calendar when Moses wrote this or when God inspired this. And it's also going with, we can just call it His calendar, and it goes from the beginning of everything, beginning of the earth, beginning of creation, coming to us now. And 1 AC, as I call it, that's after creation, is the first year of creation. Creation has occurred in 6 days, and on the 6th day we're created. And for man, that's day 1, year 1. For the earth, actually, it would be day 6, year 1. But just want to show you that Genesis 5 takes us from Adam to Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And in the blue numbers, these are the generation numbers, where Noah is number 10, because he's 10th in line. Enoch is the 7th in line from Adam. These are their lifespans given by the text. And with 1656, I put that in red because that is the year of the flood. And Methuselah's own name means that, and we will be discussing this hopefully Sunday night, that somebody knew some things before we get to Noah, with the birth of Methuselah, who happens to be the son of a prophet, and that prophet doesn't die here on this earth. With Methuselah, Methuselah's name means when he dies, it is sent. And when he dies, something is sent. What is it? It would be judgment. That would be judgment would be there. And so now we're at Genesis 11, beginning in verse 10. This is a genealogy from Shem to Abram. And in this, we are centering, we've already seen concerning Japheth. This goes back to Genesis 10. Japheth and where his descendants went. We don't go very far by way of names and the number of the generations. We really only may go like a couple of generations, and then it goes broader into peoples, such as the people of the coastland of the Gentiles. All right, that's a generic term that from Japheth you have really the Mediterranean as being covered by Japheth, but also heading up toward the Black Sea and up into Russia. And like with Ham, it doesn't get very specific past. I think it goes to 14th generation from Adam, and giving us names, but then once again gives general sort of just nations. Of these various nations, such as the Canaanites, and listing the Canaanites. It doesn't give us all the generations from Canaan now to where you have the people of the Jebusites. Okay, it doesn't do that. But here we are centering on the focus. The text is focusing now toward Abram. Why? Why is it focused to Abram? It's going to.
He's a main character.
Why is he a main character?
Because he's the one who made the promise.
Okay, the promise of what?
The Messiah will come through.
Correct. The Messiah is going to come from him. All right, it's not going to come from Japheth's side. It's not going to come from Ham's side. It's come from Shem's side. But not every child of Shem is going to be in the line of the Messiah. But it's going to be Eber, and it's Arphaxad, Eber, Salah, and then coming on down, it's going to be to Abram. With Abram, there is a promise, and there's going to be the separation of a people. It begins with Abram, but it's not entirely done. His descendants are going to go to Egypt for 430 some odd years, roundabout. They're going to be brought back out, very different than when they went in. Very different. They went in basically 70 souls. They're going to come back out by the thousands. They went in as shepherds. They're coming out with some remarkable skills. Being able to work in precious stones and weaving and embroidering and working in gold. Those are some high skills that they have developed. And it is going to center now on the subject because the Old Testament, the entire Bible as a matter of fact, but the Old Testament is focusing from Genesis chapter 3, focusing on the Savior, focusing on the Messiah. Now, we have in Genesis chapter 3 that someone is coming, that someone is a he, that someone is of the seed of woman, that someone is going to have to be born. And if born, is going to have to be born in some nation, somewhere, and God is going to separate that nation. Now, we may not be able to finish this today, and that will be okay. All right, this is the genealogy of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begot Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. That means that, okay, so the flood began in 1656. It ends a year later. It is a year and 10 days that Noah and everyone on the ark is on the ark. It's a year and 10 days. It starts with second month. I need to look back at that. I think it starts on the 17th of the month and ends on the 27th of the month. But it's a year and 10 days, and so it ends at 1,657 years. Arphaxad is going to be born 1,659 years. That's 2 years after the flood, and so we come up with this number there. And we also made mention that this is how we know that Shem, Ham, and Japheth were not born triplets, because it speaks of Noah having sons at 500, but that would be his first son. And I think we showed in this particular class that the order is in fact Japheth, Ham, Shem. Shem is the youngest in that, and showed by way of Scripture where it looks like that must have been the case. After he begot Arphaxad, Shem lived 500 years and begat sons and daughters. So Shem is not the only child he has, and Shem does have daughters. All right? You can't just have sons and hope for a population. All right? You can't do that. And so Shem died at 2,159. Arphaxad lived 35 years and begot Salah. And so, in continuing on in this, after he begot Salah, Arphaxad lived 403 years and begot sons and daughters. And so he lives until 2097. Then we have Salah lives 30 years and begot Eber. And this is where we do get the word Hebrew from. It is from Eber. And he is born in 1,724 years after creation. Then we have Salah dies at 2127. Peleg is born in the year 1758. And then we get some information. No, we've already got that from chapter 10. But Peleg is named that name because in his day the earth was broken up, or the earth was divided. And by way of the text, by way of the context, that would mean Babel. That's precisely what that would mean. And that this would have been the year approximately of when Babel broke up. It'd be 1,758 years after creation. And, okay, so let's just, we're going to go from there, and we come down to Terah is born in 1879. And then we have Terah lived 70 years and begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. This is the same pattern that we see concerning Noah. Noah had Shem, Ham, and Japheth when Noah was 500 years old. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And we can show that they weren't born as triplets. Neither was Abram, Nahor, and Haran. They're not triplets either. But it's using the same sort of pattern. And I just want to show briefly here of the lifespans and how they changed. Before the flood, you have Shem, and we're just dealing with this particular chapter, chapter 11. With Shem, Shem lived 600 years old, but his formative years, his first 100 years or thereabouts, was prior to the flood, a different world. And he lived 600 years old. But when you see Arphaxad only lives 338. I mean, for us, that's still astonishing. But we get to around the time of Babel, it's cut in half, 239 years. And we get to Nahor, which is about 200 years after the flood. We're at 148. You still have Terah, that's 205, and Abram, that's 175. But this is still quite a distance from 239. And it is a slow decline in ages and lifespans on the earth. Even when we get to Moses, which will be a while from this point, Moses lives to 120, but that's that's 175 for Abram. And there's a steady decrease to where when we get to someone like Joseph, I think Joseph was 117. That's still a significant life. And go further beyond that, and they don't live near as long. They get to more of where we are today. All right, that is all we can do today, and I appreciate everybody being with us. We will continue next week. Thank you.